From the state of New York, La Bodega de Familia with Carol Shapiro and Martin Cirincione, right? Cirincione. All right, sir.
And mine's Shapiro, but it's from
Shapiro,
Philadelphia. But you got his name
We're
right.
concentrating on
That's all right.
Cirincione.
I served time on Rikers Island. 10 years ago, I was Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Corrections, where I met many inmates, like Jose, who was in and out of jail and prison for drug-related crime and repeated relapse. I met many mothers, like Mrs. Gonzalez, who beamed with pride at her son's recent success in a boot camp program. What's guided and inspired me for the past 8 years are their whispered words. I worry about Jose coming home. I take care of his kids. He steals from me. I'm ashamed I can't take care of my own son, but I love Jose. So I wonder.
Bodega de la Familia's partner project has expanded the Division of Parole's belief that strong neighborhoods and families are a critical tool for preventing offenders from cycling in and out of our jails and prisons, for enhancing public safety, and for saving money. Families need to be a key component of any successful reentry strategy for the community. By working with families, by tapping their strengths, by
the extent of the program. Right now, as I understand it, the program is operating in 2 precincts in the city. Is that right?
La Bodega de la Familia is operating in 2.
And is that because the program is only going to be useful in those precincts, or are you planning to expand it to
Well, the
to
way
enlarge the program?
we are not planning to expand it in the city. The idea is to keep La Bodega and these 2 precincts as the laboratory. What we want to be doing is to distill the lessons we continue to learn from La Bodega and teach others. So, for example, in the Bronx, there is a nonprofit organization that's already working with people coming out of prison. We would teach them how to incorporate the family into their existing services.
So you are really, it's a pilot project, basically, to...
Well, it's been demonstrated. It's actually a direct service at this point in time, funded by the state and city.
David Osborne and then Elizabeth Shore.
In the site visit report that we have, the site visitor discussed the Vera Institute evaluation, and there is one point in here that I have not been able to understand. And I'm going to read it to you and ask you to translate it for me. It's a parenthetical remark. He says, within the group that participated in interviews at baseline and at 6 months, La Bodega participants had lower rates of arrests that led to conviction. But considering the whole sample of those selected for the study, arrest rates were higher than for the comparison group. This is a somewhat puzzling finding. What does that mean?
I think you have to ask the researchers. What I think it really meant that from what I know about the research, and again, we did not do it,
Right.
Is that the rate of arrest generally was low for everybody at the 6-month period. So I imagine that's what it's referring to, that maybe if it were extended a little bit longer. Other than that, I'm really at a loss to tell you, quite honestly.
Are there any arrest rates which are higher?
I'm sorry?
Any arrest rates which are higher?
No, and the arrests were all for very minor violations.
Part of the thing that we've tried to shift from is from concentration on arrest rate, which can be very, very misleading, particularly in a community, and to really focus on reconviction and reincarceration rates. Because if you're arrested for disorderly conduct or a fare jump or a petty larceny, it's not quite the same as being rearrested for something that's going to result in you being reincarcerated. And the figure that really is astounding with the La Bodega project is the absconding that we look for, and that's the most important and critical indicator of whether a program is successful. And absconding means very simply that you run away from supervision. And when you run away from supervision, the supervising agency, whether it be parole or probation, has no alternative but to issue a warrant. And La Bodega's numbers in regard to the absconding are really remarkable.
Elizabeth Shore.
I want to build on Bill Klinger's question. You have a small pilot program. You decided at some point that you were not going to try to clone that program and put up everywhere a replica of that. You decided you were going to seed the elements of what you had learned. Would you tell us a little bit, because it is so rare, a little bit about your thinking that went into that?
Yeah, I think that the belief we have is that there are existing resources all over the country that are doing already great work. They have their own cultural nuances, their own expertise that could be built on. And most importantly, we were looking for something that's cost-effective and respectful. There are many people who do a really great job at supervision and would just like to add the family. And it's not a matter of a new service and imposing yourself on a neighborhood and community and saying, we have the answer, but rather you already have an existing mechanism, and how can we enhance what already exists? And that could be from government, it could be from a community-based organization, it could be from a treatment provider perspective.
Kathleen and Susan.
Well, as you know, we talked earlier, and you said how you were coming to Maryland tomorrow to speak to 1,000.
On Monday, yes.
Oh, Monday,
It's
sorry.
okay.
Parole and probation officers. So I thought the question was, they're the government, and so would your goal in doing that then for them to say, if you're in Baltimore or if you're in Silver Spring, find what your nearest community or organization, go up to New York, or have you come down and train them so that you could work with parole and probation?
Yes.
That's
and
really your
That's
line.
exactly, and that's what we did in New Mexico, for example, is we actually trained all federal probation officers with our tools so that they then go ahead and
But
do
they don't,
it.
but my understanding is, unless they have a partner,
Right,
they really can't do it
Right.
by
Part of
themselves,
our-
because
right.
the key is that there's another
That's
partner
correct.
who builds the trust with the family. So really, the key is to
That's right.
find the partners all over the country.
What we do with our, when we are engaged, we have a process for that. The same thing we do with families, where when we engage a family, we do 2 maps. And I know mapping is big today. We map the family, a family tree, and we also map all the systems the family are engaged with, an eco-map. We do the same thing for an organization. So if we're going to meet with, for example, probation officers from Baltimore, we'd actually find out what community-based organizations are they already working with and tied to, and find out is there one that's really strong that rises to the top, that is interested and wants to engage in this model.
So those are the tools that you help train them with?
Yes.
Those 2 tools in
Well, we have
particular?
many more. We have a curricula that we have developed, but what we don't do is impose a curricula on everyone. Part of it is taking advantage of culture and learning what people
Right.
already do, so
Right.
we customize it.
But you bring the tools and help them,
That's
think through
correct.
their partnerships and that sort of thing.
That's
Can I
correct.
just have a quick follow? I'm very curious how effective you find the family genogram as a diagnostic tool.
We don't use the family genogram as a diagnostic tool. We use it to help the family see the levels of multi-generational, I mean, it's a diagnostic in some sense, but it's really the start for the family to see the levels by generation of addiction, of criminal justice history, of mental illness, of HIV and AIDS, to get the context of what they live with, but to also see that some of the family members we ask about who has held jobs, who helps you. So it's the way we do this with the family and with our government partners that gets the family to see, wow, I can do something different.
So it's a therapeutic tool.
It's a therapeutic
And how
tool.
effective is it?
We think very effective. We've been using it now since we started in 1996. We've worked with over 900 to 1,000 families. Families find that it's the first time, I know it sounds shocking, but it's often the first time that they've actually looked at these linkages and seen the histories, and then see their children on the map, the younger group, and see, wow, we have to do something different to break that cycle. So it's pretty powerful, actually.
And we're convinced from a government side that it is just that kind of a program and an intervention that actually reduces the level of absconding, because there's a feeling that this is the family, this is where I need to go for support, and that as a result, I don't have to do this runaway activity.
Ms. Townsend said she was very familiar with family trees and thinking through family genogram.
There you go.
All right, so any other questions here? Yes, Susan?
People outside the government might listen to your presentation and look at your program and say, well, of course you should involve families. I mean, everybody's a member of family. Most people have a mother and a father somewhere. And so what I would like you to comment on is what was the situation before you did this? How did, if they did at all, how were families involved? Because I think in looking at the innovation, it's not only that you've created a system that can be replicated in the proper context, but what the change has been.
I couldn't agree more that it is incredibly intuitive that we all have families and connections. In the criminal justice system in particular, families have not been included, with the exception of family court and juvenile justice, in the idea that they are a support mechanism to help a loved one around them. I know it sounds intuitive. And I think that's really, when people hear this, when you look at a family, there's government that has a different investment in each member of the family. And part of what we have done, my kids call us expensive Elmer's glue, is to suggest that public housing, child welfare, parole, probation, all those systems that sort of fuse in one family need to be better coordinated so that they're not pitted against one another. And I think that's what is different, quite honestly.
And from a government parole perspective, we might have a family where there were 3 younger brothers, a couple of older brothers, and perhaps 2 of them are addicted to substances. Well, we couldn't make that kind of referral services, and then the parolee is going back into that very dysfunctional family. That's really what the difference is.
Carl?
From the Division of Parole's perspective, do you view this principally as a rehabilitation program or principally as a more effective means of monitoring those on parole so that you can earlier weed out those who are, and or identify those who are headed back to prison for parole violations?
We don't use it as the second kind of a model. This is a model that's a very supportive kind of a model. We do have other programs, as you know, with some recidivists that you know with a high degree of success that they will be going out. This is not the kind of a program that you would deal with that. And by the level of support that's given, and it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's a number that they can call for support. And it's obviously, you know, we're not trying as an intensive kind of a proposition to say, we're going to nail you and jail you kind of a thing. We're going to support you, and if you have a drug problem, we're going to continue to treat it as long as there's not incidents of violence.
Martin Sarian-Cioni and Carol Shapiro, thank you.
Thank you.